I came home in uniform, 22 years of service, medals, clearance, a name that meant something, at least I thought it did. But when I stepped onto the porch of the house my grandfather built with his own hands, my brother looked me in the eye and said, "You don't live here anymore." No hug, no welcome, just a police cruiser pulling up 10 minutes later, and a stranger holding a forged deed with my name erased like I'd never existed at all. That was the moment I realized I wasn't just fighting to get my house back. I was fighting the people who shared my blood. And this time, I wasn't walking into battle with a weapon. I was walking in with the truth. My name is Colonel Raina Whitmore. I spent 22 years in the United States Air Force, most of them working in military intelligence. I've tracked insurgent cells across mountain ranges, intercepted encrypted transmissions from bunkers halfway across the globe, and briefed Joint Chiefs who wouldn't recognize me on the street. I've lived in tents, concrete compounds, and bunkers with no windows for months at a time. But nothing prepared me for how it felt to be treated like a trespasser on the one place that was supposed to be home. It was early October when I came back to Colorado Springs. The sky was that strange, endless blue that only happens at high altitude. I had just stepped off the bus from Peterson Space Force Base, my discharge folder still tucked under my arm. My boots were polished, my uniform was pressed. I even had my old key in my pocket. The house sat at the top of Juniper Hill, same as always. Built by my grandfather, a retired Air Force pilot, with his own two hands. Every board, every brick, I knew it by heart. I climbed trees in that yard, practiced Morse code with Grandpa on the back porch. I spent entire summers sleeping under the stars, listening to planes fly overhead and dreaming of the sky. That house wasn't just a place, it was a promise. But when I rang the doorbell, my brother Greg didn't even blink. He looked down at me from the front steps like I was someone collecting signatures for a petition. "You can't be here," he said flatly. "It's not your home anymore, Raina." I thought he was joking. Then I saw the way his thumb hovered over his phone, already dialing. "Don't make this difficult," he said. "You walked away. You left. We moved on." I swallowed the lump in my throat. I served. I was overseas for most of the last decade. "Doesn't matter," he replied. "You weren't around. That counts as giving up." I barely managed to speak. "Where's Dad?" "Not here." "And Mom?" He didn't answer, just stared at me. Then he said the thing that cut deeper than any combat injury I'd ever had. "You're not on the deed. You're not in the will. You're not part of this anymore." He shut the door. 10 minutes later, a patrol car pulled up. 2 officers, one older, one younger. The older one clocked the uniform. I saw it in his eyes, but it didn't matter. "Sorry, ma'am," the younger one said. "Property records show this home belongs to Greg Whitmore and Harold Lane Whitmore. No indication you have legal access." I didn't argue, I didn't cry, I just stepped off the property. I ended up 2 blocks away, sitting in my car, staring at the house from a distance as night rolled in. The porch light flickered like it used to, warm and golden, but it didn't feel like a welcome anymore, it felt like surveillance. That's when I saw it. A sign, half crooked, stuck in the lawn like a bad memory. "For sale, private listing." My stomach twisted. I hadn't cried in years. Not when my base got shelled, not when I lost friends overseas, not even when I came home to an apartment filled with silence and medals no one would ever see. But that night I cried. Because the one place in the world that should have had a space for me didn't. And the people who should have stood beside me, they were the ones shutting the door. But I didn't leave that night. I stayed parked there until morning, watching the windows glow one by one, like they were mocking me. I waited to see a face. Any face. I never did. All I had was silence, and one quiet thought that settled deep in my gut. This isn't over. I left the hill before sunrise. Not because I was done, but because I needed to think. I hadn't eaten in 16 hours. My phone was dead. And still, somehow, I felt more awake than I had in years. By 7 a.m., I was sitting at a diner just off Highway 24, same spot Grandpa used to take me for pancakes after Little League. The place hadn't changed. Vinyl booths, coffee that tasted like burnt toast, a waitress named Pam who remembered my name even though I hadn't been back in a decade. "Didn't expect to see you again, Colonel," she said. Her voice was warm. I needed that warmth like oxygen. I told her, I didn't expect to come home and be told I didn't exist. That's when I messaged Talia Monroe. We weren't close anymore. We'd lost touch after college, but she had gone on to become one of the best real estate attorneys in El Paso County. I didn't expect her to respond so fast. But within the hour, she was sliding into the booth across from me in a sharp blazer and war-hardened eyes. "Greg locked you out?" she asked. Like I was an intruder. Talia didn't flinch. She pulled out her tablet, tapped a few times, and said, "Let's start with ownership records." 10 seconds later, there it was. My grandfather's address. 2217 Juniper Hill, listed under Horizon Peak Ventures, LLC. What the hell is that? I whispered. A holding company, shell corporation, designed to keep ownership blurry. A lot of wealthy families use them. I stared at the screen like it had punched me. I never signed over that house. Grandpa told me it would be mine. Talia nodded. I remember. You told me about it when we were still roommates. You showed me the video he made you. The one where he said, he wanted the house to stay in the family, but under my name. My voice cracked. He said he put it in writing. Talia kept her eyes steady. Then let's find that writing. She pulled up a scanned copy of the will on file. It had been updated just 5 weeks after Grandpa passed. The signature looked neat, almost too neat. It names Greg and your stepfather Harold as sole beneficiaries, she said. No mention of you. I froze. He never would have changed it. Do you have any copies, backups? I think so. Grandpa recorded everything on this beat-up old camcorder. He uploaded the files to a cloud drive. I have access. I just haven't touched it in years. Her eyebrows lifted. If there's a video where he states intent, or if we can find an older version of the will, even a draft, we have grounds for contest. She paused. But here's the kicker. The will on file? It was notarized by a woman named Alice Green, and Alice Green had her license revoked 6 months later for falsifying DMV titles. Jesus, I muttered. They didn't just forge the will. They used a crooked notary to make it look clean. Talia nodded slowly. It's bigger than inheritance now. If what you're telling me is true, they may have committed federal real estate fraud. That's prison time. I leaned back, heart racing, hands clenched into fists under the table. They erased me on paper. Now they're trying to erase the proof. Then we'll bring the paper back, she said. I didn't speak for a moment, just stared out the diner window at the hill in the distance. I could almost see the roofline of my grandfather's house behind the trees. They told me I wasn't in the will, I said softly. But I was, and I'll prove it. Talia reached for her coffee, then looked me straight in the eye. Then let's go to war. Talia worked fast. She always had. Back in undergrad, she could outpace anyone in constitutional law with 2 broken fingers and no sleep. But this wasn't a law school case brief, this was my life. 2 hours after we left the diner, we were set up in her office downtown. Gray walls, stacked files, a coffee machine that hadn't stopped brewing since the Clinton administration. She handed me a tablet. You're not going to like this, she said. On the screen was a breakdown of Horizon Peak Ventures, LLC, the shell company that supposedly bought my family home. Registered in Wyoming, she said. Classic move, loose laws, minimal transparency. But look at the managing agent. I leaned closer. Raina Whitmore, my brother's wife. A part-time yoga instructor with a degree in social media marketing. What the hell is she doing tied to a real estate shell corp? I asked. Talia pulled up another document. Same address used for business filings as Greg's secondary P.O. box. Looks like they've been moving property under her name for a while. 2 cabins in Telluride, an old ranch in Castle Rock, all under Horizon Peak, quiet transactions, no listing history. So this isn't just about Grandpa's house, I muttered. It's a pattern. Talia nodded. And here's the part that really pisses me off. See this federal assistance filing? It's a construction subsidy from the Department of Veteran Affairs. The applicant name? I didn't need to read it. I saw it the second it popped up. Raina A. Whitmore. My name, my credentials, my DD 214, all used to qualify for a grant tied to the renovation of a heritage home for disabled veterans. They used your military record to get the money, she said, and they forged the e-signature. My jaw clenched. They stole my identity. And likely funneled the funds through Horizon Peak. It's white-collar laundering wrapped in patriotism. I stood up. My body moved before my brain caught up. They used my service, my rank, my blood. They used your silence, Talia said, but that ends today. The door opened suddenly. A woman walked in with a leather messenger bag and a badge clipped to her belt. Sorry I'm late, she said, sliding into the seat beside Talia. I'm Agent K. Dunham, Cyber Division, Talia briefed me. I raised an eyebrow. FBI? Freelance consultant, Kay corrected. Former bureau. Now I specialize in peeling back digital masks. Talia pulled up the files. We need to know what's behind Horizon Peak, who they've worked with, where the money's going. Kay's fingers moved fast, dancing over the keyboard like she was playing a song only she could hear. Within minutes, she froze. There's a second company, she said, registered under a logistics contract in Delaware. Same TATS ID linked to Horizon Peak. What's the name, I asked. Cobalt Merge Logistics. I knew that name. Greg's old college roommate works there, I said. He used to brag about how they had contracts in Eastern Europe, black budget stuff. Kay turned to us, serious. These 2 companies are washing money through each other. Fake invoices, inflated equipment costs. And your house? It's one of the addresses being used as a shipping hub. My stomach dropped. Talia leaned forward. Wait, you're saying they're using the basement as a warehouse? Looks that way, but there's more, Kay said. Power usage at the property spikes between 1 a.m. and 4 a.m. regular intervals, like clockwork. I stared at the ceiling. I remembered hearing strange hums at night as a kid, like machines waking up after dark. They're running something down there, I said quietly. And you've got enough to open a claim, Talia added. Forgery, identity theft, real estate fraud, and possibly misuse of federal funds. My voice was barely a whisper. They built an empire using my name, and my silence. Talia locked eyes with me. Then it's time to break that silence. I stood there, still in my pressed uniform pants, hair tied tight, heart pounding with fury. I wasn't just going to take back a house. I was going to take back every inch of truth they paved over. And this time, I wasn't alone. I wasn't planning to go back to the house that night. But some things don't wait for plans. Around 8 o'clock p.m., Talia sent me a message. We've got something. Utility logs show abnormal spikes again. Tonight, no permits, no explanations. Kay chimed in seconds later. Same pattern, same hours. Whatever's happening, it's happening tonight. My hands were already moving before my brain caught up. I packed a body camera, an old handheld recorder, and pulled on a black windbreaker that still smelled faintly of aviation fuel and desert air. I hadn't worn anything tactical since I left active duty. That night, I slipped right back into it like I never left. At 10:47 p.m., I parked 2 blocks from the house again. Same spot as before, same knot in my stomach. But this time, I wasn't there to beg for a place in my own story. This time I was gathering proof. The street was quiet, too quiet. Even the crickets had the sense to shut up. I cracked the window and let the cold October air sting my skin. It grounded me. Then I saw him. A man, mid-40s, ball cap low over his brow, leaning casually against a lamppost like he belonged there. Except he didn't. Not on this street. Not at that hour. I didn't move, I just watched. He didn't look my way, just waited a beat, then walked off. When I stepped out of the car, I noticed something tucked under my windshield wiper. A plain slip of paper. No envelope, no signature. Just one line. If you're really Raina, meet me at the alley behind 2217, 11 p.m., come alone. My training screamed, don't go, but something else whispered louder. He knows something. At 10:59, I was already crouched in the narrow gravel strip behind the house, wedged between a rusted fence and a row of old recycling bins. The wind was sharp, the scent of oil and earth heavy in the air. I heard footsteps before I saw him. He stepped from the shadows like a ghost wearing boots. Name's Ethan, he said. I fix cars down on Thatcher. Knew your granddad. I didn't speak. I didn't need to. I seen him, he said. Every week. Vans, no plates. Always black. They back into the alley. Quiet. Men unload crates. Big ones. Locked. Sometimes 2, sometimes 6. Who's with them? I asked. He hesitated. Your brother-in-law, Brian. He's there every time. Gloves on, clipboard in hand, like he's running inventory. I felt my chest tighten. What are they bringing in? Don't know, Ethan said, but it's not furniture. He pointed toward a vent under the side wall. You want to hear what goes on in there? That's your window. I nodded once. Ethan disappeared into the dark like smoke. I waited until 12:03 a.m. That's when the first black SUV pulled in. Lights off, slow, followed by a second. 4 men climbed out. One of them was Brian. He looked comfortable, like he belonged in the shadows. They hauled 3 crates through the side entrance. No talking, no phones. Everything too clean, too fast. I stayed low, slipped toward the vent, and clipped my audio recorder into the grate. At first, silence. Then voices. No delays on this batch. She's already sniffing around. Another voice, calm, gravelly. One I hadn't heard in years, but I'd know it anywhere. My stepfather. If she finds proof, sever the tie. We can't afford blowback. The world narrowed into a tunnel. I stopped breathing. My hands curled into fists. They weren't just hiding something. They were preparing for war. Against me. I waited until the trucks were gone, the lights out, and the street asleep again. Then I retrieved the recorder and slipped back into my car. I didn't cry, I didn't scream. I did what soldiers do when the mission turns personal. I documented. I cataloged. I got ready. Because the next move was mine. By morning, the recorder was gone. I went back to the alley just after sunrise, praying the vent would still hold the small black device I'd slipped inside. It didn't. Not a scratch, not a smudge, not a trace I'd ever been there. I stood perfectly still, listening to the wind rattle the old chain link, and I knew. They knew I was watching, and now they were watching back. An hour later, the message came. No sender, no greeting, just one cold line. You're playing with fire. I have your psych file. Want to see what it says about you? I froze. That file was sealed under Department of Defense clearance. locked behind two-factor encryption and biometric authorization. You don't find that kind of information unless you have deep access. Black badge, high-level admin. This wasn't just about a house anymore. It was war. I didn't respond, I didn't flinch. I forwarded the message straight to Talia and another copy to someone I hadn't spoken to in 2 years. Isaac Eng, cybersecurity analyst, former Signals team leader with me in Ramstein, one of the few people I'd trust with my digital shadow. He replied in 6 minutes, "Pull everything, backups, metadata, financial logs. If they touched it, we'll trace it. Don't wait." I didn't. That night, I turned my one-bedroom apartment into a war room. 2 laptops, 1 air-gapped, a backup server, 3 encrypted drives from my old deployment kit, stacks of documents, scanned titles, property logs, old emails from Grandpa, and a folder labeled simply 2217 Legacy. It wasn't sentimental anymore, it was evidence. By midnight, Isaac was on Zoom. Behind him was a glowing web of digital nodes, IP addresses, DNS servers, server routes, a live map of data points glowing like stars. Then came the voice that pulled me fully into the fight. "Got your packet," a woman's voice said, modulated, faceless. K. Talia's contact, digital forensics specialist, the kind of expert who could find a lie buried inside metadata 3 years old. "Nice encryption," Kay said, almost like a compliment. "Let's see what the liars missed." She dove in. Timestamps, transaction histories, file origin trails. Isaac traced wire transfers through Cobalt Merge Logistics, the second shell company connected to Horizon Peak. Kay flagged overlapping IP logins between Madison's business account and a Department of Veterans Affairs grant database, logins traced back to Greg's home IP. They hadn't just stolen my name, they'd used it to create fake invoices, false business filings, and government contracts worth hundreds of thousands. "This one," Kay said, highlighting a leasing contract linked to Horizon Peak, "carries a signature that doesn't match your other files." She enhanced the image. "That's not your handwriting," Isaac added. "And look at the cert log, it's been scrubbed. Sloppy job." Then he stopped. "Wait, look at this." He froze the screen. "The authorizing signature for the warehouse lease? That's your stepfather's name, Harold Whitmore. He's the one who approved the facility under the Ravencrest name." Silence. It hit me like a slow wave of nausea. He didn't just know, he signed it. He gave the operation permission, under a name stolen from me. Talia's voice cracked through the screen. "That's it. That's forgery, fraud, identity theft, conspiracy. We go to court." I stared at the screen, my stepfather's signature under the words, "Land Use Supervisor, Cobalt Merge Logistics." They thought they buried me in paperwork. They didn't realize I carried my own arsenal. Now we had proof. And I wasn't walking into court for revenge. I was walking in for reclamation. Of my name. Of my record. Of the home they tried to erase me from. We didn't circle the block this time. We drove straight up the hill. Talia parked in the driveway like we owned the morning, which technically we did. She adjusted her blazer. I wore my uniform. Not because I needed to prove anything, but because they needed to see it. I wanted them to remember exactly who they tried to erase. Delilah opened the front door. Fresh makeup, fake smile. The performance barely lasted 2 seconds. She saw me, saw Talia, and then saw the envelope. Her face drained of color. "We're here to serve you," Talia said calmly, placing the injunction into Delilah's frozen hands. "Effective immediately, all property transfers, business filings, and financial activity related to this residence are suspended." Behind her, Greg stepped forward, still in pajama pants like this was all some inconvenience. "You're really doing this?" he asked, voice already sour. I met his eyes. "I told you this wasn't over." Brian showed up last, leaning in the hallway like he was still in control. "This isn't smart, Raina," he said with that same smug tone. "You really want to go down this road?" I stepped forward. I was trained to walk roads like this. His eyes narrowed. "You don't know who you're fighting." "I do," I said without blinking. "A logistics fraudster, a forged deed accomplice, and a coward who used my name to steal contracts he wasn't qualified to land." He opened his mouth again, but Talia cut in, sharp and clear. "Speak one more word and we file for witness harassment." Delilah clutched the envelope like it might catch fire. "This is our house," she hissed. "No," I said quietly. "It was mine before you rewrote history." We turned and walked away. 2 weeks later, U.S. District Court, Denver. I sat in full uniform at the witness stand. Back straight, medals aligned, voice calm. This wasn't a trial, it was a reckoning. The prosecutor asked me to explain what happened. I didn't stumble, I didn't shake. "They forged my signature on a deed transferring the house my grandfather left me," I said. "They created false financial documents, funneled grant money through shell companies, and used my military credentials to access federal assistance they were never entitled to." Greg kept shifting in his chair. Brian whispered to his lawyer, Delilah stared at her hands. But my father, my stepfather, Harold Whitmore, sat stiff, staring past me like if he didn't make eye contact, none of it was real. But it was. Kay's forensic timeline laid everything out. Signature mismatches, fraudulent notary logs, metadata proof of forgery, wire transfers from Greg and Madison to Cobalt Merge, my father's voice on tape. If she finds out, sever the tie. Then came the final question. In your opinion, Colonel Whitmore, was this a deliberate conspiracy? I looked directly at the judge. Yes, I said. They didn't just try to erase my name, they used it. They built an empire on silence. The courtroom was quiet. The verdict came down hard and clean. On Delilah, 6 years for document fraud and conspiracy. Brian, 8 years for wire fraud and laundering. Greg, 10 years for federal identity theft. Harold Whitmore, 12 years, no parole. No outbursts, no screams, just the soft gasp of a dynasty collapsing under the weight of its own greed. Outside, reporters swarmed. I didn't stop for them. But I did see the others, the veterans, some in faded jackets, some with canes. One reached out his hand. Colonel Whitmore, he said, you reminded them, we don't stay erased. I nodded once. No, sir, we don't. Weeks later, I walked the halls of the Defense Service Library. Stone walls, quiet air. On the memorial wall, under black granite, I found it. Cole Raina A. Whitmore, United States Air Force, 2001-2023 Cyber Division, Intelligence Command Valor, Duty, Truth. They couldn't take that from me, not the house, not the legacy, and certainly not my name. Because I didn't walk out with revenge. I walked out with something better. Justice. And in that silence, I stood unshaken. They thought they could silence me with paperwork, lies, and shadows. But the truth has a weight of its own, and when you stand in it long enough, even the loudest fraud begins to crack. This wasn't just about a house. It was about legacy, about being told you don't belong, and choosing to fight back anyway. Not with rage, not with revenge, but with clarity and courage. If someone has ever tried to write you out of your own story, let this be your reminder. You are not erasable. You are not invisible. And sometimes justice doesn't shout. It walks in, steady and unshaken. Thank you for walking this road with me. If stories like this speak to something in you, don't forget to follow us here at Sweet Revenge, Happy Ending, where every truth has its moment and every voice finds its power. Until next time, stand tall, stay clear, and write yourself back in.